One kid killing the parents is a bad seed. Two kids killing the parents is a bad family.
Of significance did he tell you about his conversation with Dad?
He told me that things didn't go well in the conversation and that he had basically threatened him.
And how did you react to hearing that Lyle had threatened your father?
I couldn't believe it. I was not happy. I started yelling. I started saying, "You threatened Dad? Are you crazy?" And
why couldn't you believe it?
well, I mean, I could believe it, but I thought it was the stupidest thing in the world that you could possibly do is to threaten Dad. And
had there been any discussions before Thursday night about what Lyle should or should not do in the conversation with your father?
Vaguely.
Did you think before Thursday night that Lyle would threaten your father?
No. I didn't know exactly what he was going to do, but I figured that if he was so optimistic, he had a reason to be optimistic, and that he wasn't going to go in and say what he said.
Now, what was the nature of the threat as you understand it from what Lyle told you?
Just that if Dad ever touched me again, that Lyle would tell everyone.
And why did it concern you that he had said that?
Because you don't go and threaten Dad, and especially what Dad had just done to me. I couldn't believe it.
All right, how did you think your father would react to a threat to expose him publicly as a child molester?
He would not react well.
What does that mean?
He would kill you. He would not permit you to do that.
Was your father a person concerned with his public image?
Yes.
What about your mother?
Yes.
And how do you know that?
Because they had talked about it, and they had talked about it with me since I was in Muncie.
From the time you were a child, were there things that you were told to hide or conceal or lie about to strangers to make your family look good?
Yes.
Was that routine?
Yes.
Were you even told to lie and hide things from the rest of the family to make your immediate family look good?
Sustained.
Do you recall your mother ever talking to you about what to do with your school books or your homework when you went to see your Aunt Terry?
Yeah, when I went to my Aunt Terry, she told me specifically not to mention my grades, and that if I did, to tell her that I was just getting A's, and to hide my books in a corner somewhere where I knew where I could get them, and I knew if they were touched.
Okay, and did you understand why it was your mother was telling you to do this with your Aunt Terry?
Yes.
Why?
I thought that she just didn't feel that I was getting good enough grades and didn't want anyone to know the grades I was getting.
Now, had you also heard in your family, from your mother and your father, statements about how your family compared to other families?
Yes.
And what was it that they would say about your family?
Well, they said our family...
Overall.
They said our family was this great thing, and this with a lot of ancestry, and that it was going to be a huge family and successful, and they didn't want anything to diminish that.
Better than other people, was that the message?
Yes.
Is there any doubt in your mind that your father felt superior to everybody else?
No, he definitely did.
And were there things that your mother said and did that made you think she also felt that she was superior to other people?
I knew that she felt that way. I don't know that there's things that she said. I assume I don't remember at the moment.
Sustained. The answer is stricken.
Okay. You knew that she felt that way. How did you know she felt that way?
The way she felt about being superior?
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember right now.
Okay. Well, this example that you gave us of what you were supposed to do with your Aunt Terry, okay? Did that tell you anything about your mother wanting people to think you were superior?
Well, I certainly knew that she didn't want anyone to know the flaws or the bad things in the family, and she wanted the family to see perfect. That was very clear.
All right, so we're back to Thursday night, and you're having this conversation with your brother. And do you tell him, do you share with him your opinion of what this threat to your father now means? What's going to happen?
Oh, I thought we were going to die, and I told him that after I had just gotten to the guest house. I told him that Dad's going to kill us because of what Dad said to me, and I was just sitting on the couch with my hands in my head saying, we're going to die, we're going to die. I can't believe this. I can't believe you did this.
Now, kids often say, I mean, you're familiar with kids saying, oh, my father's going to kill me, oh, my parents are going to kill me. Is that what you're talking about?
No. Dad was going to kill us. I thought for sure that Dad was going to... I couldn't believe what Lyle had done and how it was just all messed up. Everything was gone. It wasn't me going to Princeton or him coming to UCLA. It was Dad.
Well, what did he tell you that your father had said? Now, Lyle told you that he had threatened your father.
Mm-hmm.
What did he tell you about your father's response to the threat?
Dad said that he was going to tell everyone anyway.
I don't understand.
Dad thought that Lyle was going to tell everyone anyway, whether he touched me or not again. That's what Lyle said.
And what else did Dad tell him? Do you remember?
He told him that I don't remember the details.
Do you remember your brother testifying that your father said that you had made your choice and he had made his?
Yes.
Remember that testimony?
Yes.
Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, Lyle told me all about the conversation. I don't remember exactly what he told me that night versus what he testified here, but I heard all of that in the conversation.
So where did your conversation with your brother go after he had told you what had happened in the conversation with your father? What happened then?
Well, I was really panicking. I was crying and getting hysterical, and Lyle was trying to calm me down. But I would look at him, and he looked afraid, and that just got me worse, because if Lyle was afraid, I was really afraid. And so he was just saying, it's going to be okay, we'll think, don't worry about it, and trying to calm me down.
Okay, and did you then have a conversation, as he has previously testified, about what could you do now?
Yes.
Okay, and what were the different things that you considered?
He said, we got to get out of here. We gotta leave the house and just get away.
So one of the things was to just leave the house that night.
Yes.
And did you agree or disagree with him?
I said, you're crazy. We can't go anywhere. Where are we going to go?
And well, what was your concern, if any, if you had left the house that night?
My concern?
You just learned that your brother had basically threatened to tell on your father.
Yes.
If the two of you disappeared that night, did you have in mind anything that your father might think about that?
Well, I thought Dad was going to kill us, and no matter where we went, anywhere, he was going to kill us. Obviously, my dad thought that Lyle and I were going to go tell somebody.
So if you left the house that night, what do you think your dad would have thought?
That we were going to tell.
That you had gone to tell?
I don't know if we had gone to tell that instant, but that we were definitely going to tell.
Now, in addition to talking about leaving the house that night, was there any discussion about running away permanently?
Yes, that's what he was talking about.
Okay. Well, you recall your brother testified that there were really two separate discussions, one about let's get out of here right now, and the other was what can we do to avoid this threat in the future?
Lyle was really concerned that they were going to come kill us right then. And we locked the door, and we checked the outside to see if anyone was coming. And then he said, we got to leave. We got to get out of this house. And I said, where are we going to go? He says, we got to get away.
Okay. Now, in your mind, you think he's talking about running away, like impermanently?
Yes.
And did you agree with him? Good, let's go do that.
No, there was no chance of that.
Now, why do you think, or why did you think then there was no chance of that?
Because of things that my dad had told me and who my dad was. And there was no place in this world that my dad was going to find us with this information that I had. And he knew that I wasn't the most stable person, and that I could just tell if I knew he was chasing me, and I.
What do you mean you weren't the most stable person? In the context of this family, okay, what was wrong with you? Why do you think your dad didn't think you were stable?
Dad didn't think much of me. He didn't think I was very bright. He didn't think that he thought I was too sensitive. He didn't think I was strong enough. He thought that I gave in too easily. And
gave in too easily to what?
In arguments, in fights.
Were you too emotional?
Yeah.
Were you not in control of feelings?
Yeah, that's what he thought. I remember he said that there was a gang fight once where a group of kids came over to our high school, and I was on the tennis court and I got beat up, and he really was angry at me for that. He just thought that I wasn't who he wanted Lyle to be, and so I was thinking that if I ran away, he would find me. He would come after me for that reason.
In your family, based on what you heard your father say over the years, was it a positive trait to be sensitive, to be emotional, to express feelings, to feel pain? Was that a positive thing or a negative thing?
It was extremely negative.
Was it a sign of weakness or strength to be in touch with emotions?
Weakness.
Now, your mother, was she an emotional person?
Very emotional.
And did she seem to have feelings and express at least her own pain?
She expressed it a lot.
And did your father ridicule her for that?
He ridiculed her to her and to us.
He talked about her behind her back to you?
Yes.
And did you get the clear idea that both you and your mother were in the emotional, not to be trusted column?
Yeah, I worked hard at not being emotional. I worked hard at trying to not cry and to hold back my feelings, and I tried, and I did well at times, but not enough.
Well, you've heard a whole bunch of witnesses come in here and talk about you crying all the time, right?
Yeah.
You think you were very successful with...
No, I wasn't successful enough.
Let me show you something, in fact, if I could. Mr. Menendez, I'm showing you this document, and just so you know what you're looking at, this is not an original document. This is a photocopy of a postcard.
Yes.
You understand that? And if you would just read it to yourself.
Okay.
And who is it written to?
To me.
And who is it from?
Daddy.
Daddy?
That's what it says. Dad.
And who is Daddy?
Dad.
Your father.
Yes.
And would you just, first of all, does he spell your name right?
No, he misspells it.
Now, would you read out loud just the first sentence?
Dear Erik, I trust that you are not crying much.
And do you know how old you were when your father wrote this postcard to you, trusting that you weren't crying as much?
I think I was in Muncie. I don't know.
Muncie?
Probably.
How old were you when you moved from Muncie?
I'm not sure when he wrote me this.
Okay.
I was 6 or 6.5, 7.
Now, when you would cry in front of your father, how would he deal with it?
He'd either hit me or put me in my room.
Would he ridicule you for it?
Yes.
Would he tell you not to do it like he's telling you in that postcard?
He'd call me names. He'd call me a sissy and a crybaby, and he'd just ban me to my room.
Now, returning to that Thursday night, you and your brother discussed the possibility of running away.
Yes.
And you didn't think you could do that?
No, I did not think I could.
What other possibilities did you discuss?
Going to the police, going to the relatives, just anything we could think of.
And now your brother's described this conversation already about why you didn't feel the police would be a viable option. Do you agree with what he said?
Oh, I'm the one that told him we could not go to the police.
Okay. And why did you tell him, what was it you were telling him about why you couldn't go to the police?
That the police weren't going to be able to protect us from Dad. That there was no chance that the police were going to be able to do anything. And
Let me ask you something. Had you, over the course of your life, ever seen anybody stand up successfully to your father?
No.
Had you seen anybody ever try?
Yes.
Who was that?
A car salesman at a BMW dealership.
Okay, and what was the outcome of that attempt?
The car salesman started to cry.
Grown man?
Yeah.
Did you ever see your father afraid of anybody?
No.
Did your father talk about being afraid of anybody?
No. No, he did the opposite.
He did what?
He did the opposite. He used to come home and tell stories about how he wasn't afraid or was fearless in this or did this when most people would be afraid.
Did he ever tell you stories about how people were afraid of him?
Yes.
So you didn't feel the police could protect you from your father?
No.
And concerning the relatives, Mr. Menendez, was there any adult relative in your family that you were close to before your parents died?
No.
Are you closer to those people now than then?
Yes.
In fact, can you remember ever having any real conversations with, for example, your godmother, your Aunt Martha, before your parents died?
No.
Now, she lived in New Jersey at some point and then in Florida, is that right?
Yeah.
For the 2 years or so before your parents died, did she live in Florida?
Yes.
When you were young, between the ages, say, of 11 and 15, and living in New Jersey, did you think about what your father was doing to you on a regular basis, even when it wasn't happening?
Yes.
Did you think about it when you were around your relatives?
Yes.
Did you ever think that they knew?
Yes.
Now, do you now think that they knew?
No, they didn't know, but I was paranoid about it at the time.
What do you mean you're paranoid about it at the time?
They would give me a look, or they would smile at me in a certain way, or say something, and I would just look at them and say, God, they know. They know.
So did you think when you were little that they were anybody that you could have turned to?
Overall.
No, not just because of that, though.
Okay. But let's fast forward now back to Thursday night. At that time, did you think that you could go to your relatives and tell them that your father was a child molester and have them protect you?
Definitely not.
Why?
Because you just didn't stand up to my dad. My relatives certainly weren't going to stand up to my dad like that and hide us out or keep us. They admired my dad. My dad was the big figure in the family. He was the successful, admired one, and he was also the feared one. And you didn't disobey him, really.
So you didn't think any of them would stand up to him?
No, they wouldn't have.
You didn't think any of them would oppose him?
No.
And did you ever hear your other relatives actually bragging about your father? Were they proud of his accomplishments?
Everyone was proud of his accomplishments.
Now, you thought your grandmother loved you, didn't you?
My grandmother?
Yeah.
Yes.
And how did you feel about her?
I loved her.
And how did she feel about your father?
She loved my dad
More than anybody else?
more than anyone in the world.
And did you have any particular desire to tell your grandmother what had been going on?
No.
So where did the conversation with your brother Lyle lead to Thursday night?
It led to us having to buy guns. Led to Lyle saying, we got to protect ourselves. We got to do something. Because I kept eliminating all of his options.
Okay, he was coming up with options.
Yeah, I was pretty much just crying and doing whatever I was doing. He was saying, well, what if we could do this? Well, what if we do that? And he said, calm down, we'll work it out. And I was just not being very helpful.
Did you think any of the options would work?
No.
So a decision was made to try to protect yourselves yourself. Is
Yes.
that it? And on that night, on Thursday night, when you were talking to your brother about what might happen, you were talking about the fact that Dad would kill you. Is that right?
Yes.
Did you think your mother would stop him?
Oh, I thought my mom would do it with him. There wasn't no one and the other.
Why did you think your mother would do it with him?
Because that's who my mom was. They were very much of a team. Besides the fact that my mom hated us, they were a team.
Were you so sure that your mother hated you before Thursday night as you were after?
After, I definitely knew. I mean, for her to have known all those years, I knew she must have hated me, but I thought it before as well.
Now, what did you do after you and Lyle decided that you would try to protect yourselves and buy guns? Where did you remain, or where did you stay that Thursday night?
I stayed in the front section of the guest house. The front section of the guest house.
Are there 2 rooms upstairs in the guest house?
Yes.
What is the front section?
It's like a little couch and a two chairs, like a little living room.
A living room.
Mm-hmm.
You stayed there, and Lyle stayed in the bedroom?
Yes.
How much sleep do you think you got that night?
Not much.
Now, do you recall whether or not that night you had a familiar nightmare?
Yes.
And had you been having nightmares for some period of time up till then in your life?
Yes.
How long?
Since I was in Pennington. Since I lived in Pennington.
Back up from the mic a little bit.
Since I lived in Pennington.
Since you first moved to Pennington?
I don't know how much they were happening in Muncie, but I think they started in Pennington.
Okay. You lived somewhere else between Muncie and Pennington. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I don't remember that house too well.
Okay. In 1978, we've heard here, is when you moved to Pennington in the fall of 1978, okay?
Okay.
All right. So do you think you were having nightmares from the very beginning, or they started up sometime after you moved there, or what?
I think they started up sometime after I moved.
Your Honor, if we're going to take a break, this would be a convenient time.
All right, we'll take a recess and resume at 20 minutes after the hour.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, I want to back up for a moment. You recall you were telling us before how your mother seemed to know things that you couldn't find a logical or rational reason for her to know. Remember that?
Yes.
After your parents died, did you find something in your parents' bedroom that made you understand how it was that she knew everything?
Yes.
And is there a photograph in front of you on the witness stand right now that shows you where it was in your parents' bedroom that you found this thing?
Yes.
And can you describe for the juries where it was?
Under my mother's nightstand.
And what was it you found?
Tape recording with a phone jack in it.
Your Honor, I have an envelope marked 267. It's been shown to Mr. Carino.